everyone, and thank you for joining me today for our scheduling webinar dealing with OnPlan and ConstructionSuite. My name is Ian Schaefer, and I'll be taking you through the scheduling aspects here, primarily through OnPlan. We'll be taking a look at some of the additional options that are going to be kind of factoring into this as well. Things like calendar events, to-do list items, and things like that again as well. Again, my name is Ian Schaefer. I'm here with UDA Technologies, and I'll be taking you through this today. For those of you who have had the opportunity to join us over the past few days, you will probably recognize some of the projects that we've been working on here in ConstructionSuite. What you should be able to see right now is our main dashboard for ConstructionSuite, and on the Today screen, it's going to show us a lot of information here for the estimate breakdowns, lead pipelines, change orders, financial graphs, and so on. Now, most of this has been populated over the past few days through the QuickBooks integration, which allows us to pull in some details here for the financial graph. Estimating and reporting helped out with the all estimates portion up here at the top to see the breakdown on costs. Most of the details that we'll be populating today are actually going to become available in a few places. On this Today page, you would see most of it here under the Summary tab. Now, on the Summary tab, you can see some of the information that's coming in here for recent activities and to-dos that are showing up associated with these projects that we've been working on most recently. Some of this information is also going to be coming in from, like you can see, scheduled tasks here. Milestones will be coming in from our schedules, but there's a variety of other activities that you can create, either by using the Add Activity option, or in this case, we've even got some insurance expirations or some certificate expirations that are showing up here as well. Now, most of this information on the recent activities can actually be viewed on the Calendars tab as well. So if you take a look over on the left-hand side, you'll actually see all the information coming down in the navigation panel. And if we click on the Calendars, this will show you a lot of the information for your calendar activities, either for all of our activities on the month view. You could also switch over to everything on the week view, day view, or a list view, which is literally just giving us a ton of information organized by date and what have you. In most cases, you'll also see down in the bottom right-hand corner an area where you can click on the calendar itself to pick the date that you would like to look at for today. There's also going to be a link to jump straight to today on the calendar. And this, once again, just pulls up the day view and shows you what we're working on today. There we go. Now, like I mentioned earlier, when we're taking a look at the month view, this is showing us everything that we should have coming up for the month of, in this case, January. So it's a somewhat limited list, and you can always click on the cog up here, the little settings tab, to turn on or off various different activities. Now, at the moment, I've got my scheduled subtasks disabled from this calendar. If we check that off as well, you'll probably see a lot more information populating on here, and this covers all the different information that we've got for the jobs that we're actively working on right now. Now, as you start to add more and more projects, this list or the calendar view here will get a little bit busier, obviously, and an easy way to kind of navigate through this information is to come up to the Filter By option and select either a specific project or a group of projects, maybe one contact or a group of contacts, so that you can kind of streamline this a little bit more and get some useful information. You'll also have some additional options as you come up to the Tools menu here. Under Options, if you go into the Calendar options, you can adjust the settings on these activities so that it will show the activity name and the project associated with it, or the activity name and the assigned resource perhaps, or the assigned user. And these are just a couple of the different ways that you can organize this information so that you can see at a glance everything that you guys are going to be working on for your projects. Now, if you'd like to add anything to the calendar as well, all you have to do is double-click on one of the days, and it will open up a new activity for you. And from this new activity screen, you can go through and add in, obviously, for starters, a subject line right here. Then you can select what type of activity this is going to be, meetings perhaps, or something like that. Under the related contacts, this is where you can go through and select who you're going to be working with on this particular activity. And of course, you can relate it to a project as well as you'd like, and so on and so forth. Now, in this activity screen, there's also going to be an option to create reminders for these as well. And these reminders will typically go out a few days in advance and can send out either an email or a text message notification, or for those of us using ConstructionSuite, you can also get pop-up messages from these reminders as well. This is just one of those many ways that ConstructionSuite can help notify everybody of what's supposed to be going on and can kind of streamline that whole project management process as well. So again, feel free to go through and set all the reminders for your tasks, make sure that the information is pulled together, and you'll see that information for the body of those reminders coming in right here. Now, much like the calendar section here in the lists of activities that we're going to be working on, there's also going to be a similar area here under the to-dos portion, where you can see all the to-dos that we have going at any given time, anything that we have that's overdue, upcoming, incomplete, and so on. This area also gives you a quick at-a-glance view of everything that we're supposed to be working on at any given point. So you can see some of those coming in right here. Just like with the calendar, you've got a couple of easy options to filter this list down. And of course, for any of you using ConstructionOnline as well, you may have recognized already that some of these to-dos and calendar events are syncing up to ConstructionOnline for you in the background. And this is going to be the case for any of you who have both ConstructionOnline accounts and TotalCare in place with ConstructionSuite. TotalCare includes a feature called SuiteLink, which actually bridges those two programs and automatically syncs up things like your calendar to ConstructionOnline so that you can view it from your phone. Same for your to-do lists. You could have your to-do list right there in the palm of your hand. And all of this information is going to be syncing up in real time. Now, stepping back to the calendar here in ConstructionSuite, we kind of talked about briefly the way some of these activities are being populated. So again, if you come and take a look at the different visible types, you can see that some of ours are going to be created manually. Some of these are going to be automatically set by the system whenever you open a lead or use the correspondence tracking system perhaps. Others, like milestones and scheduled subtasks, are actually being pulled in from the schedules, which are created using OnPlan. So if we close this down and go back over to the navigation panel, you'll see an area here where you can take a look at scheduling. And this is going to include a lot of options in here like scheduling templates, which you'll see down here in the bottom right-hand corner, recent schedules that we've been working on over here on the left side, and of course it gives us this week in review up here at the top as well. Now, the schedules that we're working on, of course, this is an easy place to go in and review those, but some of these are actually going to be started based on templates that we're putting together over on the right side. Now, if you want to take a look at any of these templates, you can always come in and right-click to edit the template or just double-click to launch it. And the templates that you're working on here will typically pretty closely mirror a lot of the estimate templates that we've put together for you in ConstructionSuite. And it's going to include a lot of things like groups in here for planning and project insurance, job site facilities, foundation, and so on. And then all of the subtasks underneath them. Like the group of planning has subtasks, design services, permits, lot costs, and construction financing. Now this area over here that I'm kind of highlighting on the left side is the task information side on this particular schedule. The right side is going to be the Gantt chart. So as you're looking through this information, you can see that on the task information, we've got the task names, we've got the start dates, we've got end dates, durations, and as we work our way down, we've got some predecessors here as well. On the Gantt chart, though, we still have some of the same information, like we've got task names on here and the task IDs, but the start dates and end dates are all represented by these, the bars stretching across the schedule across the top. So on this Gantt chart, of course, you can look at this and recognize that the 22nd is the first day for design services. There it is right there as well. This task should end on Friday, February 6th. There it is. And therefore, it spans 12 working days, which is where the duration comes into play as well. Now, if you count up the days on this, you might recognize that it's actually covering 16 days. But the calendar that I've got right now, the schedule, is set to ignore certain holidays, or in this case, we've also got it set to ignore weekends. No Saturdays and Sundays for my guys. So as you're taking a look through this and you're calculating out durations and everything like that, keep that in mind, that sometimes the tasks are going to be ignoring certain dates because you either have them set up as weekends or holidays or something like that. And it's represented here on the Gantt chart just by having these shaded out bars. Now you can always adjust this list as well. If you want to, you can always come up to and select the options where you can adjust the work days and the holidays available to your team. There's also an area where you can set exceptions as well. So if you have a client base that follows a different set of holidays and therefore you're not allowed to approach the job site on these days or anything like that, you could set these up as additional non-working days, or for those of you who need to kind of squeeze out an extra couple of days near the end of a schedule to finish on time, you can add work days, like maybe a few Saturdays over the course of the last month, just to make sure that you finish this as early as possible. Now, a lot of this information you can put together as part of the template by default. Within the scheduling templates, of course, you can always go through and create new groups and tasks, most of which you can do through the right-click menu, where you can add tasks or you can add groups. In this area, you can also organize your information by moving tasks up and down. You can outdent or indent tasks, which can sometimes create new groups for you. There's even some options in here to turn tasks into groups or turn groups into tasks as well. So right-click menu, tremendously useful for gathering up some of the information. And you'll see a lot of the same sort of options once you come up to and take a look at things like the Tools menu. There's some outdenting and indenting and converting tasks. The view is going to... sorry, I'm going the wrong direction now. The task section is what allows you to go through and, again, adjust where those are positioned, renaming items, editing tasks, and so on and so forth. Now, the templates that we're setting up are typically going to be a collection of groups and tasks that are all associated by predecessor relationships. Over a standard schedule, your template might have all of the durations set as well. And then as you scroll down, you'll actually see where I've started linking some of these tasks together to build what I would imagine a standard schedule would look like, assuming that we started this job today. This is also one of our residential samples, so if everything follows according to plan, then the schedule should be starting on the 22nd, and as you scroll down, you'll see that it should be ending, looks like, on the 17th of June. So you can see all the details and everything for that if, again, everything goes according to the initial schedule. Now from here, like I said, the whole purpose of the template is to be able to save steps, so you can put in your average duration for most of these things here as well. But you can also start to build the dependencies of this schedule by setting up your predecessor relationships. Predecessors are relationships between two tasks, and they will typically denote which task has to be ended before this particular task can begin. In this case, I'm looking at site work, and site work can't start until I've got my builder's risk insurance. So, builder's risk insurance is my predecessor, and its task ID is 7, which I would then put into the predecessor column. This, on the task side, is represented using those task IDs. On the Gantt chart, it would be represented by the connection arrows here. So you'll see those coming through, kind of linking all of these different tasks together, or tasks to milestones as well. And that's where most of this information is going to chain in. For the predecessors themselves, you can always add in several predecessors as you need to. You just separate them all out by a comma. So here, for example, for the slab inspection, we want to make sure that the slab is done and most of the foundation is done. So we might say that for the slab, our predecessors are actually going to include the footer's labor. It's got to be done before we can do it. Then, of course, we're going to do foundation labor. Let's make sure that that one gets in there as well. And then we can go ahead and drop the concrete slab in. And now we've got 3 predecessors. Any one of these being delayed will actually delay slab inspection as well. So you can kind of see it there. So this is how you could start to, of course, chain these tasks together. And for those of you who are curious, there are a few different types of predecessor relationships as well. For example, most of these tasks in this little group here under job site facilities all start at the same time. And if you want to make sure that they all start at the same time, you could use start-to-start relationships like so. Construction Utilities needs to start at the same time as Project Phone, so 13 is still my predecessor. 13, but the relationship type is a start-to-start, represented by SS. And now if Project Phone is delayed, let's drag this back a little bit, then the financing is going to come with it, or Construction Utilities, rather, is going to come with it. Now, another type of relationship that you can put together here is a finish-to-finish relationship type. So for portable restrooms, if we want this to finish at the same time as construction utilities, then we would say that this is task ID 14 is my predecessor, and the type is finish-to-finish, FF. And there it goes, it jumps back. In this case, if something came up with construction utilities and we had to extend it out, portable restrooms is going to be jumping back as well. The difference, though, is with the start-to-start relationship type, it doesn't matter what time that task ends, because the relationship is keyed off of the beginnings of those tasks. So you'll start to see them like that. Now, a lot of this information you can also kind of gather up as you get into and start working with the predecessor section. Once again, through the right-click menu, you can go to and set predecessors, which just allows you to go through and set your task IDs, select the activities, the relationship type. This one, of course, would be FS if it was represented on the task info side. There's also an area where you can add in a lead time or lag time here as well, plus or minus so many days. What this would look like is if you wanted to create a little bit of gap here, you could say that there is a single work week between completing that builder's risk insurance and starting your site work. And now you've got that 5-day gap as well. This becomes especially important as you're doing things like waiting for the concrete to set or to dry out. If you wanted to give the paint time to dry on the walls, maybe you give them a day or two, things like that. So there's always time for leads or lags as you're putting together your template. Now, of course, most of this, like I mentioned, is designed around creating a template. You're building all of the links and everything like that you would use on a standard job. Sometimes, though, your projects don't kind of follow suit with the standard template, in which case, having the template doesn't really help. You may instead want to come into an estimate and build the schedule using the estimate as your framework. So if we skip back into the estimate here, under the File tab, you'll see an option to create a new schedule from that template or from that estimate. And this will take all the categories and subcategories from the estimate and turn them into groups and tasks. So you'll see some similarities here. We'll have planning come through as one of our groups. Foundation will show up as a group. Framing, and so on. Under things like exterior windows and doors, my tasks would be windows, exterior doors, overhead doors and installation, and windows and exterior doors there as well. You'll see this actually represented as you're going through and selecting the schedule generation options. So from here we can just select this, add this estimate framework to a new schedule, which is going to pull in all those groups and tasks. There's some additional options in here too, like including subcategories with no estimated value, or prorating the company overhead margin into the schedule. Now, each of these has a purpose. For those of you who haven't finished your estimate yet that you know are going to include some of these $0 items, maybe you want to use this first option just to make sure that the tasks get put in place. The next one down would be for including options or non-accepted change orders. And we've got one here for prorating the company overhead margin, which is going to be primarily beneficial for things like cash flow reports, and so on out. So as you select the options that you want, you can now click OK to generate an entirely new schedule. Typically, these schedules will show up like so. All the groups and tasks will be put in place. All the tasks will start today, and they'll all, by default, have a duration of 1 day. From here, you can see that we would then need to go through and start building all of the durations and predecessors for this one. Again, if most of your work is truly unique, no two jobs are ever even close to being the same, this might be your better option so that you don't have to go through and create each individual task. For those of you who tend to do something like production building, or if you're just building the same kind of floor plans over and over again, it's going to be substantially easier to go in with the template instead. So you'll always be able to pick your options there. Each has a benefit. Each has its pros and cons. Like the biggest pro for building your schedule from scratch here, or building it from the estimate template, is that it carries with it a lot of the information like prices and resources that you've assigned in the estimate, as we talked about on Tuesday, and things like that. It's also going to ignore any $0 items, so you don't have to worry about activating and deactivating tasks or adjusting any of your relationships between tasks if something gets left out. The counter to this is in the template that you put together, you can predefine a lot of the relationships between tasks so that you don't have to go into this and rebuild all of your predecessor relationships and then recreate all the durations, especially if these are things that you're going to be doing over and over again. Now, to kind of help out with that, if you do decide to go with the template, but you still want to be able to pull in the resources and costs and things like that, when you save this schedule into your project, you can come back to the File menu, and there's an option here to actually sync this schedule with an estimate that you've got in the project. This allows you to pull in all the pricing information and pull in the resources that you had assigned in the estimate, thereby saving you those extra steps as well. Just in case you get that wild hair and you need to go through and pull that information together, this is a quick and easy way to do it. Also, with the templates, if you set up your schedule template and you're pulling this into a project, but the schedule isn't supposed to begin until, let's say, February 2nd, you can come to the Project tab in this case and shift the project start date to go into and select when you actually want to begin this job. This is going to push back all the tasks in the project the right amount so that the project still begins on now February 2nd and all the relationships and timing and everything like that is still pristine. From here under the Projects tab, you'll also see some additional options like setting and showing baselines. Baselines are basically like an after image of the schedule that we're looking at right now, a snapshot in time, if you will, that allow you to do things like comparisons between when the task was originally scheduled versus when it's actually happening now. In addition to this, on the Project tab, you'll see some options in here to change things like the coloring on the Gantt chart. This tends to be a pretty fun option as well, because now by going through and selecting some different colors, you can add a little bit of flavor to the schedule. Or, once again, if you go into the right-click menu, now select the task information. You can actually individually define colors on tasks as well, just in case you have some that are very important for some reason. Maybe this is where we're getting the majority of our money, or certain red tasks if you want to map them as part of the critical path or something like that. So with that, if you step into the View menu, you'll actually show some of the options, like selecting to only display the critical path. You can set that up here. And for those of you who aren't familiar with critical path, by the way, the critical path is the fewest number of tasks that the schedule can collect to get you from the beginning of the job to the end of the job. Basically, it just looks at all the relationships that you've created between tasks, all the predecessors, and it finds that shortest path. And this is referred to as the critical path because a delay on any one of these tasks will cause a delay on the schedule as a whole. Now, there may be some other tasks as well that you would consider to be part of the critical path, maybe tasks that you consider critical to completion of the job, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be part of the critical path. The critical path could be one task if you have a single task that spans from beginning to end, or it could be a dozen tasks, or it could be every task if you have them all linked together perfectly to go from beginning to end. So keep that in mind as it's mapping this stuff out, and it will always represent it too, by the way, by having the relationships here on the Gantt chart show up in red, or by hiding everything that doesn't fall in line with that critical path. Now, some of the other view options that you have here, of course, you can limit the view down to a certain number of activities here if you'd like. You can go through and filter this list down by resource or by priority. These are all different things that you can set on the tasks themselves. And there's also some options to go through and collapse all of your groups so that you're just looking at a group view, or expand them all back out again so that you can see all those tasks that we're actually supposed to be working on in here. As you move out a little bit further, there's an area where you can start assigning some of these resources. And this can also be, again, pulled in from the estimate if you've synced your schedules to your estimates. You'll also be able to go back into the right-click menu again and set resources here, which tends to be tremendously useful. And then, of course, as we move out, we'll talk about reports and such in just a moment as well. Since we're here, though, I'd like to take a moment to take a look at how the resources actually function here in ConstructionSuite. Within ConstructionSuite, specifically within the scheduling system, the resource management is going to become pretty critical as you try to balance the workloads for your employees or adjust how you're using subcontractors and things like that. And from this area, you'll actually have a number of extremely useful tools that can help you with this. So if we begin by taking a look at the resources for this particular task, we can start by adding in a new resource. And it gives you a Rolodex of all the different resources that are available in your contacts list. Now, of course, this could be everybody. So we give you the ability to go through and search by grouped contacts or recent contacts, somebody that you've been using over and over again, an alphabetical listing perhaps if you just want to go through and choose based on the display names, or you could just search for an individual here as well, just in case you wanted to look for somebody simple. Now, as you're going through and you're actually selecting these individuals, you'll see some of the details for the contact information showing up down here on the bottom left. Just to the right of this, you'll also see the activities that they're working on and their availability here on the calendar as well. Now, typically, as you're going through and you're selecting individuals, you'll see dates on here in red where you've already booked them to a certain task or event. So here, for example, I've got Alice Gorey working on something for me from the 30th of December through to the 4th of January. I've also got something scheduled for Alice on the 19th of February. So if we're looking to schedule tasks, I want to make sure that I don't double up on these things. Conveniently, for the date that this task is supposed to start, I have nothing on my activities list, nor when I check the calendar do I see anything down here on the listing either, so she should be okay to actually use on this particular task without causing any kind of a resource conflict. If we were to select Alice and click OK, the next thing that's going to help us out is the certificate warning. Now, the certificate tracking system is something that's available first in the Premier or Catalyst versions of ConstructionSuite and above. And if you have your contacts set up without any sort of workman's comp or liability insurance, performance bonds, anything like this, you will actually get a notification here when you're trying to assign them to a scheduled task that maybe they shouldn't be used because you don't know for a fact that they have any kind of coverage. If this comes up, I would highly recommend you go back and just double check to make sure that you've got all the paperwork in order for this individual. If you're fairly certain that you do, you can always just click OK to skip by this. So there's the activity now. We've got Alice Gorey associated with setting up the project phone. And just like with the activity that we set up on the calendar before, this can also have reminders associated with it as well. In this case, though, the reminders have default days set up for them in the reminders here as well. Planning reminders are typically defaulted to about 10 days prior to the task beginning. Starting reminders typically default to about 2 days out, and custom reminders are usually just the day before. You can always come over here though and change that to whatever you would prefer and select a new time for it and so on. Clicking OK just commits that. Or save rather, will commit that. Now these are extremely handy as well. Setting up these reminder messages means that as you go through your schedule, you can let ConstructionSuite handle all of your notifications for you. Go ahead and set up these reminders so that ConstructionSuite is sending out all your emails and your text messages and alerting your subs and making sure that your project managers are updated and so on and so forth. And this just makes it extremely easy to do so without having to constantly pull out your phone and double check. Now, what else also kind of helps in this particular situation is now that we go through and assign a lot of those resources, you can come up to the ConstructionSuite tab as well and publish this schedule to ConstructionOnline. Now, we'll kind of explore this one in a little bit more detail tomorrow, but for the publish options, what you're doing is you're basically confirming that the schedule is now complete and ready to get started, that the job is already signed off on, and you guys have been awarded the contract on this one. And now you're putting the information up online so that everybody can access it from their phone, or from any mobile device for that matter. So again, publishing this, tremendously useful because you're putting it out there for everybody who needs to be able to access it, and then all you have to do is hop online and set permissions. Now, of course, this talks about, again, all the adjustments that we're looking at for the schedule itself, all the resources that we've assigned, the relationships that we've set up for these tasks, the durations of the tasks themselves. And when you start to pull that information together, you can come back over to the Reports tab, which we skipped earlier, and take a look at some of these reports that are available. From here, of course, you're going to have reports like work orders that you can send out. We've got that cash flow report and our value reports to be able to go through and adjust some of the information that we're projecting for these jobs, like where we're going to be spending the most money or where we're going to be pulling the most money, perhaps. There's also going to be things like scheduling conflict reports that you can generate from here as well, just to use to indicate where you have the same resources assigned across multiple projects or multiple tasks. You'll also see some additional reports in here as well, like the baseline schedule report, which does depend on having baselines set. But this is tremendously useful because the baseline schedule report will show you the impact of a small delay throughout the whole of the project. If you guys are 2 days late getting started on something like the lot costs, getting the lot costs taken care of, you can see how that 2 days affects all the other tasks throughout the entire schedule that might be tied into it in any way, shape, or form. So again, baseline schedule report's great, but it does require that you set up some of those baselines as well. In addition to that, we've also got scheduled task reports and some list notes reports, and all of this information that you're looking at here, and the status reports as well, they're all based on the details that you're putting in for these, and they all require that you do a good job maintaining those schedules. With that being said, maintaining your schedules becomes really easy to do when you take this information and first of all, save it into your project. Just drop it into this lot 195 Baldwin Park. And now that we have the schedule in place, you can right-click on the column headers here to turn on some additional information in these columns as well, like priorities, so that you can go through and set which tasks are the most important to accomplish next. We can set a status so that you can track that throughout these jobs. We've got some additional options in here like percent complete, some start dates and constraints information, resources, and so on and so forth. You might also notice that we've got some checkboxes on the left side and the right side. The left side, of course, is going to be checking off columns that you would like to see on the task information side. The right side, as it says up at the top, is to show this information on the Gantt chart. So if you wanted to show the task ID and the task name and maybe the resource, you can check off all these options to show on the Gantt chart. Not too many resources though. And again, this information is just going to be available to you whenever you guys are looking at either just the Gantt chart view or just the task view or whatever it might be. From here, there is also a little banner separating out the task information from the Gantt chart. And if we grab on this now and drag it out a little bit to the right, it will show us those additional columns that we turned on before, like percent complete, priority, and status. Now, as you go through and you click into these columns, percent complete, for example, allows us to go through and actually assign a percent complete. So if this task is 50% done, we can put in 50%, and you'll see over on the Gantt chart that it's half full now. So we go down to the next task, maybe this one's 100% complete, and that one's all the way full. So percent complete allows you to go through and show how accomplished you are on all these tasks. And it's got a rolling total as well, a percentage total for the categories or the groups up at the top. And this just gives you a quick little depiction on where you stand on this group of tasks. In addition to this, we've got the status column over here. If you click into the status, then you can select whether or not you're started on this, waiting for something else, paused, completed, what have you. And priority is another great one as well, because this just allows you to show what you need to focus on moving forward. You'll also see as you go through and you actually start assigning some of these things, like the statuses and the priorities and things like that, that we have some icons showing up over here on the left side as well in the notes column. And these icons can represent tasks that are completed. There's some statuses that can be represented here. Resource conflicts will become available or visible to you when you're looking at these as well. Overdue tasks will be indicated here also. Right now, this last icon is also going to be showing me the notes that I've got for these tasks. So if we click on that, or hover over it rather, you can see some of the information or the detail for that. Now we can right click and go into the task information and see the specifics for those notes as well. There's notes, site will require backfill, and so on and so forth. So this just gives you quick and easy ways to keep track of all that information, and this is what shows up when you guys generate things like list notes reports, or some of the other icons are going to be available when you're doing a status report or something like that too. So once again, this is just kind of pushing most of that information together, and now if we go back and save it again, and step back into ConstructionSuite, you'll once again start to see where this information is showing up, not only here on the Recent Schedules tab, there it is, but also under the Activities or the Calendar as well. So plenty of different fields for you to keep track of the tasks and the information that we should be looking at, and yeah, should be pretty easy to manage from there. Now, one last thing that I would like to point out for the schedules, a lot of these jobs that that I've got set up here might have multiple schedules associated with them, like so. There's always a chance that you could have multiple schedules set up, and you don't necessarily want to have 10 schedules worth of tasks showing up on the calendar for one job, and the way to get around that is by having a primary schedule. Right now, it looks like this Lot 195 Baldwin Park Revision 2 is my primary, but we can always go in and right-click and set a different primary from here as well if I needed to. And whenever you save one of these schedules, you'll see that it actually gives you an option to, let's do a save as. There's a checkbox here to save this as the primary schedule as well. So if you wanted to do something like that, you always could. Whichever you have marked as the primary is going to be the one that shows up on the calendar and all the activity screens and everything like that. So keep that in mind as you're setting these up. The primary is always the one that's going to be driving how you do business. And if you need to make some revisions, always make sure that you're making revisions to the primary and not working on a schedule that's actually just set off to the side and not important anymore. So keep that in mind as we're going. Now, with that, I believe that that's actually going to cover most of what we would like to review for today for scheduling. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and end the standard webinar. And yeah, I'd like to thank all of you for joining me today throughout this discussion regarding the scheduling and scheduled tasks, how that information shows up on your calendars and your to-do lists and everything like that. And stick with us tomorrow as well as we start to explore how this information is shared through things like ConstructionOnline and our calendars as well. So once again, thank you all for joining me today. This is Ian Schaefer with UDA Technologies, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for your time.